Hey folks, what's up? Welcome back. Another Poem Master video. And today, since we're almost at the end of this update, I mean, it's what, the 26th? Well, at least, I'm recording this on the 26th. And we only have, one more unit that's yet to be released, which is Gardevoir, which, again, like I mentioned before, I do like, I did, want to try out these units before I do these, but it was mainly more so the tech ones like Iris, Marnie, and the support, which is Hilbert's Grid, because Dath is pretty straightforward. So I mean, it's strikers, just numbers, right? Nothing too interesting about Dath. So I thought we'd just go ahead and do this, right, with the the update. So we're doing support first because support really doesn't. I mean, I didn't have much changes, right? I might, have some different, I guess, criteria for each tier and all that. Let me switch those around, but generally not too much difference here. So, anyways, again, shout out to the folks who helped, me work this one out. I'll let you know who they are in the description box below, and. Yeah, as usual, again, tier list very, very subjective. I don't even agree with this one 100%, like I usually do, right? So yeah, let's do this. Just basically, just a few criteria again for a tier list. They're all assuming they're, at the most optimal use, right? I'm not gonna put something up there just because they're free and cheap or whatever. Just at their most optimal use. How good are they? So, that being said, let's get into this. All right. So as usual, let's just throw in one for each tier first, to make it easier to see what tiers you sort of gauge what they are. Right. The first one we could throw in Blastoise. Blastoise is still very, very good, right? A bit of a slow buffer, but reliable. Always reliable. The crit is nice. Move gauge acceleration is nice, right? You do need an MP refresh on your crit to max out your team's crit, but it's not that bad, right? Good defenses. The double move gauge refresh and water pulse is really, really nice. The little heals that it gets here and there are cool. I mean, you run it in rain with May, do some solid damage with Hydro Cannon is fantastic. It just does a lot of things, right? Obviously, you don't really need too much to justify Blastoise here, right? So moving on, we'd say probably Meganium in next tier, right? Meganium gives you Sun on Sync, which is really, really nice, especially now that we have Leon, right? Leon really, really enjoys the Sun on Sync with Meganium, for sure, right? And obviously max crit, +4 attack and special attack under Sun. And speed, right? Light screen is nice. Bit slow, not the best tank, but it's good buffer again with Sun on Sync. Moving on, next year I'd say something like Dusknoir, right? Dusknoir is still solid. Like a lot of people say, oh well, Dusknoir got destroyed by Hilbert, which is kind of true. Although they do kind of play slightly different roles, in terms of how you want to play them as tanks and such, right? But he's still, if you look at the kit objectively, it's still it's still good because Dire Hit, max crit is always a huge bonus for a sync pair to have, and you could also buff physical attack, which is nice. And you can take a few hits, has vigilance, all that stuff, which is cool. And if you run him as like don't run him as the main tank. You could also run like Inspire Ire to take some draw some aggro for a bit, which is also cool. Moving on, next tier I'd say something like a Torchic, right? Crit buffs are nice. Obviously, unfortunately, can't max out crit, which is probably what's holding it back from being like a tier or two tiers above. But it gives you both physical and special attack. You could buff its own speed, a flame charge. It's just a really, really great, sync pair, right? Moving on. Next here, decent replacements. I'd say something, Metacham, right? Metacham fits this tier a lot, right? It's kind of like Torchic, but worse, because Torchic also buffs special attack, which Metacham does not. Torchic also buffs its speed, so it makes it a bit more manageable there. But Metacham also, again, gives you +2 crit, +4 physical attack, which is nice, right? Moving on to next tier, situational, I'd say something like a Salamence, right? Rarely would you need to buff, well, I wouldn't say rarely, generally don't really need something to buff both your defenses, but in some cases, maybe, right? And generally, offensive supports are just much more valuable than defensive supports, unless you're running something like a Pheromosa, who doesn't need like offensive supports, or like a Charz or Singzu Red, who doesn't really need offensive supports, and you can maybe throw in like a defense support in there for some reason. I don't know. And then next here, which is called, honestly, still okay if you don't have anything better, since their supports and even the worst support can be useful. So in this tier, I'd throw something like Stoutland, right? Again, not fantastic by any means. But it's you can't say it's terrible, because it's not. You still have gradual heals for your team, which is nice. Got a full heal, which is okay, right? You can potentially decrease the opponent's defenses. Again, it's definitely among the weakest of the supports, but you could still use it, right? So, anyways, well, now that we've got one in each tier, let's just go from, I don't know, left to right, I guess. Next one, Coffee. Coffee, probably we could still be in the very, very good or very good tier. Xerneas does do a lot of what it does. Obviously, it still has some things that Xerneas doesn't do, which is really, really nice, being a AoE burst heal on the potion, which is fantastic. On top of, again, just being an unkillable tank. Also, the fact that it does have 6 REX is always nice, right? Very, very, very good at removing status conditions. Probably one of the best in the game, honestly. In my opinion, the best in the game at removing status conditions. For the cost, right? Because, again, you don't have to use any MP for that, right? So you can remove multiple status conditions in a single battle without worrying too much. Anyways, moving on. Got Pearson Obstagoon. Pearson Obstagoon, I'd probably put one tier below Dusknoir. It's just that Obstruct is not very great. Obstruct, like, it depends, right? Obstruct's really good in completely scripted stages, or scripted stage, like, to a certain extent, when the moves aren't like completely random, right? So you know when the big hits are coming in, then you could obviously obstruct to block it. But when you're not, if you use obstruct wrong, it's not your fault. Again, the opponent's random, right? If you use obstruct and then the opponent goes like X special defense, all you get like screwed out of multiple turns, right over there, right? Sync with Kanto, and if they like use 2 or 3 of those in a row, and then like they end up just hitting you with like something like really weak, like a Swift or something, you're screwed, and that really, really hurts your whole team, right? And also the other buffs is not that great either. A lot of the buffs do rely on Obstagoon obstructing, and the really annoying thing is like none of them are guaranteed either. Like it would be nice, like, okay, if like all those buffs are like guaranteed if you obstruct, and it's like they're not guaranteed. Block and lunge is like only 20% chance of happening. Block and heal is 20% chance of happening. After you have to block something, and then it's again not guaranteed. These are nice though. These are definitely nice. But yeah, it's a good crit buffer, right? It's just not as straightforward as Phoebe. Again, better tank, but Phoebe is a better offensive support. Piers is a bit more defensive. And it's not that great defensively. Anyways, moving on, we got Starmie. Starmie, probably drop it down a bit, right, to like very good. It's just that like Xerneas kind of just took its job, right? And also not that great of a water damage dealer anymore, now that Palkia is a thing as well. Again, if you want a special defensive buffer, Xerneas just better. Gradual heals, Xerneas also got you as well. Starmie does have evasion, which Xerneas does not have, which is why it's still really, really nice. But Xerneas does kind of replace, like, again, same thing with Comfy. It kind of got taken over by Xerneas, a lot of their jobs, right? Moving on, we got Torterra. Torterra probably still in very good. It's great defensive tank, right? Could do some solid damage. The one full restore is nice from time to time, although personally I'm not a huge fan, honestly. But that's nice. You can debuff your opponent's attacks while raising your whole team's defense. That's always great, right? And with a lot of more units that do appreciate the attack debuffs in this game, that's always nice, right? Anyways, moving on, let's Pro Pass. We'll put in the decent replacements part. It does give you speed, special attack, and defense, which is all really, really great buffs. Unfortunately, no crit. If it had even +2 crit, would be so much better, but you can't ask for it too much, right? It's good enough. Also, wide guard can be clutch sometimes as well. Decent, defensively, all that. It's great. Moving on, Clefairy. You could throw it in the good tier. I really, really, really don't like running Clefairy. Just because of its speed. It just needs so much in terms of team building, which does, in my opinion, hinder it quite a bit. The guaranteed crits are great for showcase videos, great for YouTube videos, man. Clefairy is fantastic for doing YouTube videos. Not as great for just using it, I guess, right? Again, the guaranteed crits would have been really, really nice if it was just +2 crit instead, or even +1 crit, honestly, right? Oh, dude. If Clefairy had +1 crit instead of guaranteed crit, Clefairy would be so much better. X accuracy is nice for blue for brutal clarity or whatever. Does some solid damage, right? Decent heals on sync, which is cool, right? The EX Clefairy is really, really nice. But overall, the downsides are just kind of right? Not very, very good, unfortunately. Big one again being speed. Moving on, Eevee. Man, tough one. I don't know. Maybe I'll put it in the tier before the last one. Rumors are she could be getting a grid next month, so hopefully that turns this around completely. But at the moment, she's definitely almost borderline not usable because her main gimmick relies on you using her sync. And there are just too much demand for using sync right now at the moment, with again EXs being a thing and a lot of very, very powerful units that do very, very good things on their sync. It's just hard to find a place to fit in Eevee's sync, right? And it's just not that great anymore. It's only +2 to all stats, which again, it's all stats, which is nice, but it's only +2. And 90% of the time, if you're running a special team, you'd prefer to go with Xerneas sync instead. It's just so much better, right? And Eevee's sync is just not that valuable anymore. You'd rather just run a proper support, because outside of syncing, Eevee does not give you any support, right? Okay, Eevee gives you a few gauges, but keep in mind, Eevee's trainer move buffs attack for itself. It doesn't buff attack for its teammates, buffs attack for itself. Again, Eevee was made with co-op in mind, which again, we don't really consider co-op any, a serious game mode anymore. Again, the potions are nice, but they're just 40% potions, which are the worst potions, right? Eevee just, I don't know, has 1 gauge spam, which I do like about Eevee, but outside of that, really doesn't have much, unfortunately. But again, hopefully the grid does fix it, and we'll see it, somewhere in the higher tiers. Moving on. We got Delibird. What Delibird? Yeah, in the good category. All the presents always great, right? The random stats that you get are nice. Obviously, more importantly, the plus speed and move cage acceleration is nice. X-Tack all is always nice, and then obviously you got all the hail stuff that you could run Delibird in. But I do really like Delibird in terms of the stuff that it does outside of hail, which is really cool. Moving on, Steelix, probably still, it's hard to put Steelix and separate Steelix and Torterra, because they do similar things. They're obviously not exactly the same. Steelix is slightly more situational than Torterra, right? I'd say Steelix does have a much better EX in my opinion, right? With recuperation and all, and getting all the mega stats, this and that. But yeah, they're all physical defensive tanks, with Torterra being a more well-rounded tank overall, right? And Steelix, again, more like extreme on the physical spectrum, while also being nice in like sand comps. So yeah, Steelix, I guess. Moving on, Rotom we could put into the close to top, although it's really close, honestly. But I still think it could be there, right? The single move countdown is nice. Obviously, the crit buffs is nice. Unfortunately, there's only 1 MP on that. So a lot of times, if you're running Rotom, you do kind of have to hope that MP refresh hits. Like special attack all is cool. It can dodge, I guess. It's okay. it like Rotom just continues to be on this like downward trend, unfortunately. But I don't think it's dropped like that much yet to where it's like 2 tiers below, right? But anyways, moving on. Alakazam is still easily in the top tier, right? Speed buffs, defense buffs, heals, special attack buffs, accuracy buffs, crit buffs. I don't even know what else you buff, but probably 5 other things. Could do solid damage. Fantastic special defensive tank. Incredibly fast, right? Plus 400 speed on Mega. Got recuperation on Mega, right, as well, or on Sync. So a double move gauge refresh if you don't want to Mega it, right, with Psybeam. Still obviously fantastic support. Moving on, Lilybee, probably put in a very good category. Again, bit of an RNG unit overall. But still a crit support, which is solid. The master healer on your 3 gauge move is fantastic. You do get some physical attack buff sometimes, right? Hopefully, evasion buff for your team is nice. There are decent amount of units that use evasion, right? The blind spot units, bob and weave units, right? Moving on, Marlin's not that great. It redirects damage. It's not even that great of a tank to redirect damage, honestly. It gives you some defense buffs, but then again, like, it's probably the worst, X defense all unit. Moving on, Glalie we can put in the decent replacements, I guess. I mean, there's just better units that give you gradual heal at this moment. Obviously, Glalie, it gets into another gear when you're running it with Hail or Freeze teams. But outside of that, it doesn't do too much. Again, I'm not saying it doesn't do anything, because that's not true. X regen all still nice, but it's just like a better Stoutland for the most part. Also does give you special attack buff for your team, but overall it's a better Stoutland. Outside of Hail and inside of Hail, it obviously does a multitude of things very, very well. So there's that. Moving on, Swanna on the brink of maybe dropping, but I'd still keep it there, right? Obviously, the potions are probably still the best in the game. The speed buffs is nice, and speaking of the speed buff, one thing that I've come to appreciate the more I use Hilbert, right, is the ability for Swanna to run dual tracker comms so much easier than like Hilbert can. Just because it has a 1 gauge gust with move gauge refresh 9, that is just so powerful, right? And then obviously defense buffs for your team, also nice, great tank, all that. Anyways, moving on, Superior, probably still put in the good tier. I mean, okay-ish tank. Energy Ball sometimes could debuff your opponent's special defense. X special attack all is nice. Time to energize is okay. It doesn't do too much though. Outside of that, Hilbert, the one everyone's been waiting for, because that's a new one. Hilbert was a close one between top or close to top. We settled on top, although I'd say I personally don't agree. Its downsides I really don't like. Obviously the upsides are fantastic. fantastic upsides. Not a huge fan of its downsides though. Which being, obviously not a great tank at all. And the lack of ability to run efficient dual striker comps, unlike like every other one on the top here, like Xerneas, which also obviously still up here, right? Xerneas, Alexam, Swanna, Blastoise, they all run it much better than Hilbert. But again, Hilbert's upside is fantastic, right? You got Defense Crush. For physical buffers, obviously great. You got Flinch on Waterfall now. You got 2-turn max crit, which is really nice. A 2-turn max physical attack, obviously. Unfortunately, MPR 2 on X Speed all, but you have X Speed all with MPR. So you do fantastic. Offensive a buffer. You could also buff your team's defense if you want as well, by like 2. Or evasion by 2 if you want that. But yeah, it does a lot of things. Pretty much a physical Swiss Army knife. A lot of things you could do in terms of what your team comp is. A lot of different situations. You could fit a lot of things, right? So, anyways, moving on. Lunatone I think is okay, but in situational, obviously gives you +2 attack and special attack, which I'm actually not a fan of. I don't really care that much about it, but you do get X special defense all, which I do find really nice, and a 1-gauge spammable, which is what I like about Lunatone. Arcanine is, I don't know. Arcanine, it's between Arcanine and Marlin, probably for the worst support in the game. Just really doesn't do much, unfortunately. X speed all is good, but like, okay, you're literally like the worst speed buffer in the game, I think. I'm pretty sure like every other speed buffer is probably better, and then the status shield is like, who cares, right? And then Blissey, maybe situational. It just, if it wasn't for the fact that Blissey just gets like absolutely like blown out of the water if hit by like a physical sync move, it would have been better, I'd say, right? I actually like Blissey's kit a lot. It's just that the physical defense stats are very bad. But anyways, that's what I guess. Hope you guys do. I'm gonna guys in the comments down below. Like, enjoy this video, or our channel for some more Pokemon content. And I'll see you guys in the next one.